Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rick Seiger. I have the great honor of working as your Secretary of Community and Economic Development here in Pennsylvania. Excited about a really meaningful chat with a leading scholar in regional economic development in the country who has recently taken a look at AI. Before we get into it, I just want to say thanks. We're like into late Friday here. Folks have been here for a couple of days. Thanks for being so engaged. Thanks for focusing on this important work. Thanks to the event organizers for putting together just a dynamite program. Couldn't be more honored and thrilled to be with you today. So let's get to it. Mark, give us a sense of this report. People are talking about it. I think it's been really favorable toward Pittsburgh. A lot in there. Why don't you kind of walk us through some of the key findings?
Will do for sure. Just want to say it's great to be here. Incredible room full of neural networks, right? I mean, still here, still functioning. So yeah, it's absolutely a privilege to talk to you about this. Yeah, we did release a big report a month and a half ago. It's gotten a lot of national attention, which is maybe useful for you guys. But basically, we started with the idea that if, in fact, AI has the greatest potential to be a general-purpose technology that changes the productivity of people, firms, and places, then we really ought to see how places stack up on it, right? If it's something with the potential to change the map of the economy nationally and globally. So it's very important to understand where you are. And given that, we rated the AI, we used the word readiness, of hundreds of big, medium, and small metro areas, and multiple Pennsylvania cities, so we can have this conversation in other places as well. But on 14 metrics across three pillars of readiness, we asked, do places have talent? Multiple measures of that. Are they innovating AI solutions? We have a number of questions and data there. And then, are there firms adopting AI? So what did we find? First off, we found extremely wide divides in the United States among the AI haves and have-nots, and that's somewhat worrisome just as a nation, because this is likely a kind of winner-take-most dynamic, at least for a while. So San Francisco, San Jose, way out ahead, what we call them AI superstars in a class of their own. That's not surprising, and it turns out it's not really bad news for Pittsburgh. It may be for others, but the second finding, Pittsburgh is killing it. It's basically,
we love to hear that.
Yeah, no, basically that's the finding. Pittsburgh is killing it in most of those measures. Let's say 12 of the 14 measures, Pittsburgh is in a top 20 or 30% of places. Many of them in the top 10. We overall rank you number 7 for readiness in the United States. So that's pretty compelling. Behind the Bay Area metros, but in the conversation with New York and Boston, and ahead of Seattle. You could see that list on our website. Overall, Pittsburgh sits at the top of our emerging centers group, with absolutely elite strengths in bachelor's and PhD talent. Workforce talent already is quite strong, and this is Metro Pittsburgh. University assets, top. Academic publications, number 2 in the country for AI, important research. And access to high-speed computing, number 1, reflecting infrastructure at CMU and elsewhere here. As for the main gap, it's clear, and I think it's good news that there is a sort of clear to-do area. Pittsburgh deficits are clustered entirely around the metrics in our benchmarking of firm and AI adoption. Pittsburgh ranks quite low on firm data readiness, firm cloud readiness, and actual AI use. Now, obviously, that's not like your tech firms, but it does show that you have many layers of older firms that may or may not be adopting these technologies. I think that's a recognizable challenge, and it's something I think you could work on. But that's pretty clear. So I would say the bottom line here is benchmarked on 14 metrics nationally. You look very strong on talent, very strong on innovation infrastructure, and okay, let's say okay for this adoption issue. So that's what we have. This has gotten a lot of attention nationally, and I think it's just an attempt to, where are we with the geography of this technology? So that's what we see. Rick, how does this strike you first? I mean, does this sort of resonate, I hope? And then kind of what are your kind of initial reflections on how this Commonwealth can aid and abet here?
Yeah. It definitely resonates. First of all, I could listen to you talk about how great Pittsburgh is in technology all day. So if you just want to keep going on that.
Not sure about it. Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he's going to be great too.
Yeah, we love it. Yeah, it does resonate. Look, it got a lot of attention because it's a really interesting piece of work. And in a really fast-moving domain, it's good to kind of ground oneself kind of in benchmarking across the country. And by the way, other cities in Pennsylvania did very well here too, including Philadelphia. I think that
that's true.
As we think about some of these key opportunities, and I know we're going to talk about workforce maybe a little later in the conversation, adoption does stick out as interesting. And it's a place, just to be brief on this, where the state has made some investments that have proved to be actually pretty effective, but at a small scale. Like our manufacturing PA program, where we collaborate with Carnegie Mellon, actually, to deploy kind of university talent into existing manufacturers to deploy automation and increasingly AI. I think programs like that, programs like our manufacturing extension partnership, could be really relevant as we look to tackle that adoption piece.
Yeah.
I would just say, kind of zooming out a little bit to how we think about AI and technology is, as you heard the governor talk about yesterday, we're all in. We want Pennsylvania to be the place where this technology is pioneered, and really importantly, where we take advantage of the full economic opportunity here. And I'll just briefly talk about sort of what I mean by that. It is important that, and indeed we have natural resources that enable us to be a real center for data center and infrastructure development because of our energy resources, because of our strong building trades. And the governor mentioned yesterday really significant investment, for example, from Amazon, $20 billion in the eastern part of the state to start to build out the initial piece of their data center network here. I think you'll see more such investments of that type. That's important. It's especially, I think, important in rural parts of Pennsylvania, where those kinds of intensive construction jobs and really high quality jobs that don't necessarily require a college education in the long term are in place. But I think to take full advantage here, there's two other pieces at least, and I want to get your take here, that are really important. One is kind of all the really, really smart people here, right? Like the tools that are being powered by these data centers and by Pennsylvania Energy are helping build companies all around the world. We want more of those companies to be here. Right. And so I think as a state, working alongside our leadership, including Jen Gilbert, who leads our technology group, coming up with the right set of interventions and policies and convening opportunities to make sure we take advantage of that. How can we make Pennsylvania the destination of choice to build an AI company? Certainly convenings like this is a heck of a step. Yeah. And then finally, and something maybe we could talk about a bit more, I've actually been struck by the acceleration of manufacturing opportunities related to the AI boom. Whether it's companies like Hitachi or Mitsubishi or GE Vernova building out much more significant factories to address demand and transmission equipment and switchgear and things like this, or whether it's the opportunity in the robotics cluster, to build the hardware required, whether it's a vehicle or other things, to sort of power companies using AI. I think those kind of three pieces, like infrastructure and energy, innovation-based companies, and manufacturing, are a way that we can take sort of full advantage of this moment and also do so in a way that benefits all of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think you more than most places, even in this upper echelon of, let's say, 20 places. Yeah, there are probably 20 to 30 places in America that are pretty formidable on this, with you, in that top 10. But this region has the chance to build a deep ecosystem that is doing talent, is innovating and creating the technology and building it out into verticals. My sense is that third one is the challenge. That's the tougher one, but I think you have such a good base otherwise that I think it's very much achievable here.
Yeah, so let me follow up with you on that point. Would love to just get a sense from you about our competition, frankly. Like, what are you seeing in other states? What are key things you think we could learn as we grow? What has stuck out to you, maybe positive and negative, from some key other states, both maybe those that we compete with typically, or like mid-Atlantic regional states, but also around the country?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to filter this sort of for interests that relatedness of places. First, a couple just cross-cutting facts about places that look really good in our metric. Big metros look good, so that to the extent you can act big, I think is part of it. And I think this region and this event, you're enlarging your brand. I think that is really important. Places that are doing well have leveraged major research infrastructure. That's been historically important here. But other things, states that have seen success are setting strategies based on understanding their strengths and weaknesses and becoming obsessed about the gaps or the cracks and trying to solve them. Massachusetts, a formidable, economy, piled on and has, done a major research analysis of their positioning, and they're already beginning to channel action. So I think that's whether or not that's possible. I'm seeing more places creating these regionalized hubs based on research about themselves. Creating focal points or hubs to pull activity together. Massachusetts put together this AI hub. Utah has a kind of champion in the governor's office. So it's such a diffuse, wide-ranging technology, so immersed in so many different aspects. You have to find these focal points to have any ability to interact. And then talent is central. Broad AI literacy is a hugely important complement, especially if you have designs about building this out as on the adoption side. Mississippi, has put together something called the Mississippi AI Network, quite impressive, across the state, touching K-12 curriculum, but especially focused on the community colleges and higher ed. They're not a competitor of yours at all, but it's interesting, and but they're thinking this is a way to get some toehold. As for the main, so I think those are a few things I would say. The last one, New Jersey is working to support broader commercial build on an ecosystem basis. I think there's some relevance there. The state, Princeton, Microsoft, and CoreWeave are working to partner in a kind of multi-sector, multi-dimensional way to try to drive commercialization and startup investment and capital. So that's something. The point here is the regions are doing a lot on their own, but states are piling on in ways that they can, often to solve particular problems. So those are a few things. I wonder, what assets to you, set Pennsylvania apart? Where does the Commonwealth have a specific edge or possibility of aiding and abetting what's going on, say, here? And I would say Philly looks very good on this stuff as well.
Yeah, I think it's the key question. And look, first, thanks for the comments, and thanks to panelists and folks here. I mean, a lot of what we've been doing here is learning. But I'll give you a couple thoughts on where I think our Commonwealth can win here, or how the Commonwealth can help you win here, maybe is a better way to think about it as a region. When we took office, when the governor took office, there hadn't really been like a focused economic development plan in Pennsylvania in like 20 years. And we knew that we needed a plan because candidly, like, how do you know where you're going, right, if you don't have a plan? And we did a ton of listening, and we actually went really, really deep into the data. Yeah. And we looked at core sectors that are both driving our economy forward into the future, and also sectors without which, like, we wouldn't really be Pennsylvania. It would be difficult for us to succeed. We chose 5 sectors where we're focused. One of them is, we call it robotics and technology, robotics, AI, and technology. So, it was true, in spite of how fast this industry is moving. It was true, 2 years ago when we wrote this plan, that we knew this was going to be a focus area. And so then the question is, like, how do you create a set of interventions or ways for the state to support companies, maybe most importantly, early stage companies and existing technology companies, right? From, some PhD student in a CMU lab, like about to file like an LLC, to like Duolingo. How do we ensure they can all succeed here, and make Pennsylvania a home and stay? So 3 things I would call out, I think, that are relevant here, that where we've seen a lot of success. First is my colleague, I don't know if he left yet, but he's had a plane to catch, Ben Kirshner, who runs this office called the Office of Transformation and Opportunity. By the way, this is relevant to any business in Pennsylvania. If you're a barbershop or, or an autonomous vehicle company. We knew that Pennsylvania did not have the kind of speed required for business. Businesses complain to us all the time. It's too slow. Yeah. We don't know what's happening. Our permit's stuck. We created an office. Governor signed an EO on it the second day in office, Office of Transformation and Opportunity. And the goal here is to bring like a business sensibility, the speed of business, to all of government. And 2 proof points. Number 1, that team cataloged 2,400 state permits, licenses, and certifications, every single one, and set like an expected time for process. And if we don't meet that time, we give you your money back now. So like if you apply for your barber license and we tell you it's going to take 14 days and we actually deliver it in 16, you get the license and you get your money. Now look, if you're a big manufacturer like Joe Mastrangelo and EOS and you're looking for a stormwater permit, you probably don't want your money back, actually. You just want the permit. But it's enabled us to sort of focus the bureaucracy, focus the permitting agencies and the regulatory agencies in a way that's been really effective. One proof point I'm fond of using, when we took office, it took 8 weeks to get a simple business license like an LLC. Today, it takes 1 day. You can try it. It takes 1 day. So big results. And then the second thing, and I think this is especially relevant to, let's say, the infrastructure, energy, and manufacturing components of this process, which have like typically more complex environmental and permitting requirements, is we have a fast track permit process for large scale projects. So, if you're building large gas fired generation and data centers in, Homer City, Indiana County, just down the road from here, like you're going to get a real hands-on approach from our permitting experts and actually from the governor's office directly to sort of unlock the value of that project with real speed and real certainty. And I think that is something we've done that is beneficial to any business, but is especially important just given the sheer velocity of this industry and how fast people need to move.
Right.
The second thing I'll say is actually like business climate related. With the leadership, bipartisan leadership in the General Assembly before my time, there was broad agreement to reduce the corporate net income tax. That's had a significant effect. I can sit across from the table from companies we're trying to recruit to Pennsylvania and say, by the time your factory's open in 31, like our C&I rate's going to be under 5%. It started at 10%, 9.99%, so really significant benefit. And then thirdly, I think it's really about equipping regions, localities, counties with tools to win. One really important piece of that for us has been site development and deployment, but it's also working, for example, with the AI Strike team and Carnegie Mellon and innovation leaders from across this region to like identify the key areas that are going to be required for them to unlock value. The state is not here to tell regions what to do. The state is here to be a strategic partner, right, and help regions realize their goals with, a strong point of view about where we're going. And on this point, I think the tech industry, like AI-driven technology in Southwest Pennsylvania, is really a moment, right? In some sense, we're all fortunate to be doing this work together in Western Pennsylvania, like in 2025, because it's like game time.
Yeah.
And we're totally committed to helping move this forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something important here about regulatory change as necessary to get the acceleration you need while preserving all the values and need. And then the other one is at the same time supporting bottom-up ecosystem development, where arguably Pittsburgh is one of the great successes of building an infrastructure for an ecosystem. And I think it's really showing up here. I mean, I would say a couple things. The moment here, I think, is first take the win. You have a moment to celebrate here where a lot of things are moving in the right direction. And Pittsburgh hasn't been great at taking the win sometimes. You guys think the worst of yourselves in some ways. And that's what I think is really important about Horizons here, is that moment. The strengths are huge, so I think there should be a moment of celebration, along with, though, that tough recognition of, there are some, in our work, demonstrable, challenges around adoption, especially in some firms. So I would say continue building your brand. That's one way to accelerate. So regulatory reform and, brand acceleration are both ways to mobilize this region, And I think it's clear that the benchmarking, that the crucial next work is to really advance firm adoption. Again, as I keep saying, in Southwest Pennsylvania.
We're seventh, right? Like, how do we get to the top three? What's the key for you?
Yeah, you can't get to one or two. There's sort of lock-in already occurring. I think there's more fluidity, though, very much so. And you guys can move up further. I do think it's about developing strategies for, it's just so clear in our data drill down that, 1, 2, 3, there are 12 of the 14 metrics that look, extremely strong. And then there's a quite anemic, surprising, gap around this actual firm adoption. These are measures like, it's imperfect data, it's survey data, but from the federal government. But it says AI adoption by firms is only okay, not great. Same with cloud readiness of firms, data infrastructure in firms, not great. Now this is based on surveys, but I think it all points in the same way, and that fits with other research that has been done. So the fortunate thing is you know where you need to look. You need to know what you need to work on, at least based on our data, and you should check it out and look at other stuff too.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And actually, just to harken back to the governor's panel, I'll say two things. One, he was on a panel with actually two of the oldest companies in Pennsylvania, right. Like BNY Mellon and Westinghouse. And those are both companies I think that would fall into the category you're talking about, which is hey, there's this sort of set of legacy firms. They haven't accelerated their adoption, and yet they're doing the hard work of putting that forward. You heard, Rob and Vince talk about deploying AI tools across their entire workforce. And Westinghouse, actually learning from their decades of nuclear deployment and testing data, using AI to get faster and add cost certainty to their process. Those are great, particular examples. And the other example I would call out, though, I don't want to take credit for this work, is we're actually doing this at the state too. Every qualified state employee, people that sit at a desk mainly, like me, can now have access to tools like ChatGPT or Copilot as part of the IT suite that were deployed at the state. And I think that's quite fun. I have experimented with different AI tools in my own workflow, but now to have it kind of part of the core IT stack as a government employee, I think is really interesting, and a place where maybe the state government can demonstrate what's possible. Let me ask you this. Though we try to be as fast as possible, and states, we are trying to be nimble and just work as hard as possible to keep up with this.
Yeah.
It's true that sort of state economic development machinery, bureaucracies don't often work as fast as the private sector.
Yeah.
Like, how can we think about beyond this adoption concept, which I think is really smart? Like, how do we think about keeping up here? How can the state make sure that, in addition to going to conferences like this and talking to a bunch of people at the bleeding edge of this work, like make sure that we're relevant and additive at this moment?
Yeah, clearly AI just accents, what's been a growing challenge over like 100 years, right? I mean, just economic and technology change has been increasingly stressing, the structures we have that basically arose in the 1940s, so I think this does accent a really serious challenge. At the same time, I think you're beginning to try. First, you're recognizing you're impatient with that. Mm-hmm. I think this conference and the strike force approach is saying we need to shake things up. Everybody's trying hard, but we need to mobilize more and different problem solving in more and different places. Let's have everybody be part of the solution. So I think that mobilization is approached, but also beginning to think even more seriously about organizational change. I'm thinking of, we talked about these, many states are beginning, or a number of states, leading states are beginning to create these hub projects, working with industry, working with small firms, big firms, universities, putting things together that way. Or having a focal point for all kinds of policy change. And then I mentioned Utah, which I think is interesting, that is created, they have a history of interesting structural changes and a good record of collaboration out there and a pretty formidable innovation operation. They've created, it's an Office of AI Policy in the Commerce Department there that develops data-driven policy. These are bullets from their website. Pursue timely regulatory adjustments. Facilitate links between business and academic institutions and other stakeholders. It feels like that's spiritually kind of moving in the way, you guys have been trying to operate, but I think trying to getting to that, a very clear focus. And I think they have individual point people at the universities. So there's this core way of operating quickly that I think they feel, I think it's an interesting model. And the state has a good record on technology policy. So, that's one idea. And then the other one is, as you've been saying, I think AI for government, and pushing transformation even further internally.
Yeah, both really interesting ideas. Yeah. Maybe I'll say something about workforce development, because I feel like, we've talked a lot about different opportunities.
And I would say maybe workforce development is one way to attack the speed problem.
Yeah, I do think, this is a really interesting and really important issue. And, I was thinking about what to say today. It sort of occurred to me that when I think an average person on the street thinks about like the AI workforce, they probably think about something like you, right? Like us sitting in this room, people that are starting companies or working at companies that are using AI. And that is true, right? We're so proud. I mean, I've worked at CMU for many years, worked alongside colleagues at the University of Pittsburgh, universities all across Pennsylvania, of just the deep excellence and concentration of talent that is here in Pittsburgh and that has stayed in Pittsburgh. It's a huge benefit to the region. And as you heard in the sort of rankings nationally, that's where we come up really, really strong. So it is that.
Right.
But I would also sort of posit that it's much more than that. And actually, if we're doing our job right at the state, we've got to make sure we take advantage of the AI revolution to sort of support workers all across Pennsylvania at all different skill levels. Yeah. And so I think that's where actually Governor Shapiro's focus on, career and technical education, apprenticeship type education is really important here. again, to go back to that sort of three-part piece, like when you're talking about infrastructure and energy, a lot of times that's about, the state building trades. Like the number of electricians and pipe fitters and steam fitters needed to build the amount of infrastructure we're talking about is absolutely massive. These are exceptionally high-paying, high-quality jobs we should celebrate, just as we celebrate, roboticists from Carnegie Mellon. And those are jobs that are really a direct result of this piece. Same is true of technicians in an advanced manufacturing facility like EOS, for example. These are all jobs that can take advantage of. Some are driven by AI. And I think
there may be less danger of automation as opposed to augmentation in all of those segments you mentioned.
That's very true. And so I think our workforce strategy has to and does take all those things into advantage. We want to do everything we can to help Carnegie Mellon and Pitt and Penn State win. That's a no-brainer for us. We're one of the top research-intensive states in the country. But it's also true that this has to work all across Pennsylvania. And the good news is it does, actually. I think there's a way to get this right. And at the state level, what we can do is continue to resource programs that work. And I'll just give one quick example. We have invested, $10 million in a coalition of community colleges and local school districts in Northeast Pennsylvania to support workforce and skill development for the data center industry in response to Amazon's $20 billion investment. That's not dollars to Amazon. That's dollars to community colleges, dollars to a school district to build out a lab so that kids from actually a young age can get interested in careers in this domain, have a chance to not just be born in Berwick, but to live in Berwick, have a great career in Berwick with a high-paying job and a high quality of life. That is the kind of, I think, possibility that this industry offers for Pennsylvania.
I just throw in, we've done some work on the kind of geography of exposure to AI. Where exposure should, by the way, it doesn't necessarily mean automation. It can be both. I like the word involvement instead. AI involvement in non-urban places will be a bit less. So there's less disruption, but there's more danger maybe of being left behind. And that this at all scales can mean, the winners pull away and the big cities pull away, unless there's work like this to try to build fluency and participation across the whole Commonwealth. And I think that's a better way to build support for the overall initiative for the big cities as well.
I agree with you. And I think, look, this is a key role for, government to play. When we put forward our economic development strategy, we were really clear, this has to work for all of Pennsylvania. And it's a big challenge. This is a very big state with lots of diverse places. And I think we're going to work every day to make sure that everyone in Pennsylvania realizes these gains. And by the way, there's an education component to that. There's a sort of job creation component to that. And there's a community component to that. Because as we strengthen our communities, it gives those people, especially in rural Pennsylvania, the ability to stay, to build a life, where they want to build a life with a great job.
I mean, digital technologies in general, and I think AI is going to be one of them where, the rich get richer. So at a regional level, a national level, you want Pittsburgh and Philly and some of your other metros to participate in the haves. And you want to make sure that the have-nots in the Commonwealth aren't left behind. And that bridging, I think, is ultimately good for building a consensus around innovation in the region. Without it, it might not be as sustainable.
Yeah. I think it's really well said. Yeah. We're getting a little short on time. Mark, why don't you give us some great wisdom in a sort of concluding set of remarks, then maybe I can wrap us up. And if we're lucky, we maybe have time for a question or two, too.
I would just say, the mobilization you're bringing is I think, one way to attack the speed issue. It's a way to attack the need to spread adoption further. And so I think that's extremely important. Your starting point is enviable. I think we've all suspected you were probably in very strong position. I'm sure a lot of your competitors are, disconcerted by how good you look on these measures.
Yeah.
And I think you're right to pile on and should, given this winner-take-all or winner-take-most dynamic here, right now you're in a position to be one of the winners of this technology, and you want to make sure you are because it is extremely powerful. And, there is the possibility of disruption. So, I think it's a really exciting moment. I think, Governor Shapiro and you have an important role and are really shouldering that. So, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Mark. Let me just add a couple of thoughts. Number one, just to say again, thank you. This is an incredible gathering of folks. I've seen a lot of people that I hadn't seen in a long time who I've known, but I've also met a ton of new people who are interested in Pennsylvania, some for the very first time. So thanks for your interest. If you're a company working here, thanks for your investment. If you're a venture investor, thanks for your next investment. We couldn't be more excited to have you here. And maybe I want to close with a little bit of a call to action here. We've got real momentum. We have real assets. And we have a community that's really galvanized, to your point, Mark, to create not just an event like this, but a sort of energy to catalyze activity in this domain. Yeah. So let's work together. And by the way, you have our full partnership. Half the people in this room have my cell phone number already anyway, I'm pretty sure, to get this done. Let's work together to take this energy and turn it into results. How many jobs do we want to create? What kind of firms do we want to recruit? What kind of industrial sites do we need to recruit those firms? How do we make sure that the next 20 startups that come out of our universities have a place to land and stay here right in this region? We would be delighted and are highly motivated to be a partner with you in that effort. This is my hometown. My house is like a 5-minute walk out that window, literally. So this means this is especially important to me. And I think, luckily, it's especially important to all of Pennsylvania because we're at a critical moment here. Last point, the governor's fond of saying in our administration, we live by kind of 3 letters, get stuff done. I can't wait to work together to get stuff done with you all. So thanks again for having us today.
Thank you.